Ikoshatata, Rakatoma, Ikasha, Ikanadete, Rakoshete, Irakatata, Ikonashete, Ikonashata, Rako, Ikana, Ireke, Ikoshatete, Rakotototo, Ikenete, Ika, Rakatama, Ikata, Rakatomoshete, Ikanadete, Rakoshata, Rakosa, Rakatama, Ikata, Rako, Ikene. Glory to God. Glory. Glory. Ushete, Ikana, Rakatama,
All praise, glory, and honor is most certainly due to the Most High Elohim of the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And I want to say peace to each and every one of you in the name of His Son, Yehoshua HaMashiach, who we know as Jesus the Christ. It is always a blessing each and every single time that I can come before you to bring a message contained in His Word. I never count it as a light thing to do so. In today's message, I want to deal with something that, quite frankly, I guess I shouldn't be surprised that people are still doing certain things because there's no logic associated with it. It's a lot of emotion, and it is a spiritual thing. But just because something is a spiritual thing doesn't mean that it is from the Most High. There is a spirit of confusion. You know, spirit doesn't, just because it's spiritual doesn't mean it's good. You know, people even talk about it and say, well, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. What exactly does that mean? You know, but what I want to talk about is tongues and speaking in tongues. I saw somebody just on a, you know, kind of like on a whim. I saw a clip of somebody rapping in tongues, and tongues it means one thing in the Bible, and in the Christian church it means something entirely different. In the Christian church, tongues is not something that is recognizable. Okay. And when I say Christian, I mean the co-opted Christian church. It's something that it's Babel, basically, and it's not recognizable. And when I say recognizable, I mean a recognizable language. See, in the Bible, that's not what tongues is. Okay. And so let's go read that. This is Acts of the Apostles, chapter 2 and verse 1. This is on the day of Pentecost. And it reads, and when the day of Pentecost was fully come, they were all with one accord in one place. And suddenly there came a sound from heaven as of a rushing mighty wind, and it filled all the house where they were sitting. And there appeared unto them cloven tongues like as of fire, and it sat upon each of them. And they were all filled with the Holy Ghost and began to speak with other tongues as the Spirit gave them utterance. So now what spirit? So now this spirit is an angel. Okay. And they are hearing, and then they are saying. Okay. Similar to how just, you have a process in your mind to speak. If you are bilingual, for example, or really speaking one language, this is a process that happens in the mind first to speak these words that can be understood. See, this is what tongues is. Let me keep reading. And there were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews, devout men out of every nation under heaven. Now, when this was noised abroad, the multitude came together and were confounded, meaning they were confused, because that every man heard them speak in his own language. They didn't hear Babel like you hear in the Baptist church today. I grew up in a church like that. I remember, times when I first saw that, or it looked strange, it looked weird. It wasn't something that I was, doing at all. A lot of these things you see associated with worship, you cannot find in the Bible, but they call that speaking in tongues. Glossolalia is what that actually is. It's when people are supposedly have the spirit of speaking in tongues in this, but it's not an intelligible language. You can't tell what it is. That is not, again, that's not biblical. But here, what do we read? Verse 6, let's read it again. Now, when this was noised abroad, the multitude came together and were confounded, because that every man heard them speak in his own language. Verse 7, and they were all amazed and marveled, saying one to another, Behold, are not all these which speak Galileans? And how hear we every man in our own tongue wherein we were born? See, you can't make the Bible something it's not. You shouldn't make it say something that it's not. This is not, the word is not something that you can add or you can take away. The reason I'm saying that is because if it's saying that tongues, speaking in tongues, meant that they heard recognized languages of various countries, how do you go about just speaking this babble and saying that's speaking in tongues? And it's not even, I don't mean like Babel where they were speaking recognizable languages, he confounded the languages. This is not a language. So it says, again, how hear we every man in our own tongue wherein we were born, Parthians and Medes and Elamites and the dwellers in Mesopotamia and in Judea and Cappadocia and Pontus and Asia, Phrygia and Pamphylia, in Egypt and in the parts of Libya, about Syria, and strangers of Rome, Jews and proselytes, Cretes and Arabians, we do hear them speak in our tongues the wonderful works of God. Okay, so they heard them speak in recognizable, once again, just to reiterate this point, recognizable languages. Let's go to 1 Corinthians, the 14th chapter. 1 Corinthians, the 14th chapter. And he's talking about order in the church and gifts within the ecclesia and the congregation. And notice what he says in 1 Corinthians 14 and verse 23. See, like I said, I can remember hearing that babble. I was like, this doesn't mean anything. You can't recognize it. And then nobody in there spoke that language. It's not like the person was speaking Portuguese and there was somebody from Brazil in the back. You know, it's not like he was speaking Arabic and somebody from Yemen or Afghanistan was like, oh, yeah, they could understand. That's not the case. So the question is, what is the purpose of this? See, Most High's he's not about confusion at all. Okay? This is 1 Corinthians, the 14th chapter, and verse 23. It says, if therefore the whole church be come together into one place, and all speak with tongues, and there come in those that are unlearned or unbelievers, will they not say that ye are mad? That's if they're speaking actual languages. Like, if everybody's speaking different languages, like, how are you going to be edified? Let alone if you're speaking a language that is not even recognizable. Okay, by anybody. And they try to, this is a language of this is an angels. Like you don't read any of that in the text. When they spoke in tongues, they spoke different recognized languages. Furthermore, you look at Paul. He said, I speak more languages than you are. What did the jailer say to Paul? Canst thou speak Greek? When he spoke unto him, yes, because he was educated. And he was multilingual. But nevertheless, it says, if therefore the whole church be come together into one place and all to speak with tongues, and there will come in those that are unlearned or unbelievers, will they not say that ye are mad? But if all prophesy, and there come in one that believeth not, or one unlearned, is he convinced of all? Is he judged of all? And thus are the secrets of his heart made manifest. And so falling down on his face, he will worship God and report that God is in you of a truth. Notice what he says then. How is it then, brethren, when ye come together, every one of you hath a psalm, hath a doctrine, hath a tongue, hath a revelation, hath an interpretation. Let all things be done unto edifying. See, you speaking in an unknown babble language, I don't even call it gibberish. It's just gibberish. It's Google Gaga. If you're speaking like a child speaks, that I'm talking. When I say a child, I mean like an infant almost. That is not edifying. Okay, it wouldn't even be edifying if it was a recognized language. If everybody spoke Swahili and then somebody came in speaking Spanish and nobody knew Spanish, they only knew Swahili. You could be preaching hot gospel in Spanish and not edifying anybody because they don't understand Spanish. They speak Swahili. You see what I'm saying? So like that's not edifying. So what are you doing it for? That's when they're recognized languages, let alone this gibberish. So it says, if any man, I'm in verse 27, if any man speaking in an unknown tongue, let it be by 2 or at the most by 3, and that by course, and let one interpret. So somebody needs to tell you what that person is saying. Why? Because the whole point of it all is edification. The people need to be edified. Notice what he says here. But if there be no interpreter, let him keep silence in the church and let him speak to himself and to God. Now, some will say, well, you know, they got this different language and they'll come and interpret with some gibberish. Nonsense. That's still not what's going on in the text. They were interpreting recognizable languages. And he said, if there be no interpreter, hey, let him keep silence in the church and let him speak to himself and to God, because nobody else knows what you are talking about. That's with the recognized language, let alone with this gibberish. And brothers and sisters, and to those that are listening, you know, that come across this message, you really need to consider proper worship and what this Bible is saying. Don't just go for any and everything. And with that, brothers and sisters, it's always my prayer that you were edified.